Now, Rouven is the General Manager of the SAP Business Process Intelligence Business Unit. And as member of the senior leadership team of SAP, he's responsible for helping customers master their digital transformation by understanding and improving their business processes in a data-driven and intelligent way. Some of Rouven's former roles include SAP's Chief Data and Analytics Officer, CFO and member of the Management Board of SAP Germany, and Regional CFO for Middle and Eastern Europe. Today, Rouven will provide us with an overview of business process intelligence and strategy. Hi, Rouven, welcome.
Hi, Innocente. How are you?
Well, thank you. I hope you're well as well.
Absolutely, and thanks for having me. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak to our customers and AFSUG in Africa. That's awesome.
Thank you for being here.
So let's jump right into it. So thanks again for having me. So I want to talk a bit about, the topic of business process intelligence. And actually, Kathy was talking about our history of 50 years. And I would add one component that SAP has always been in these 50 years. And that's actually the topic of business process intelligence, right? We have always been in the business of helping our customers, yourself, in running your business. And at the end of the day, the business processes is what it is to run a business in the most efficient and effective manner. And I want to talk a bit about the renewed focus that SAP has put on it. And as Cassie mentioned, we have revived our strategy last year, and BPI, Business Process Intelligence, is one of the outputs of that. So I want to guide you quickly through our thinking and the strategic relevance of that. The background of all this is, of course, you, right? Our customers that live in an environment of increasing competition, technology disruption, and obviously, with the pandemic, many more challenges that you see. And actually, many of you have come to us and raised, rightfully so, a lot of questions to us, right? So how does great look like in the new reality, right? How can I get more out of my SAP solution? How can I become more efficient, right? And how can I run my business better? And actually, with our applications, we help you. But on the other side, there is the business process component, which we might have not helped you enough in the last years. And clearly, if we look at transformation, and specifically successful transformations with our customers, they all share one common theme. And that's the combination of those four components that you see on the left. So it's all about system, data, process, and in the middle of that, the people. Right? So being able to bring all these together and driving a holistic transformation across these dimensions is absolutely key to really becoming a successful kind of digital business. Now, on the right, I mapped for you kind of the SAP offers that we have. And you see, obviously, we have been around in the intelligence suite on the system side more or less forever, right, since we exist. And we have added the business technology platform to manage your data, your connections, your integration. And the centerpiece, the people with people experience, also with success factors, also we cover that nicely. However, the business process intelligence component was missing to really cover the full spectrum. And this is what BPI is here to do, right? So take you by the hand and help you really from where you are today with running your business processes, in helping you then moving this into the next generation, into the digital era. So obviously BPI is now a center part of our intelligent enterprise strategy. So I put the red circle around it so that you can identify it more easily in what we call our burger slide. And I guess it's easy to understand why it's internally called the burger slide. So BPI is one layer of the intelligent enterprise overall strategy. And I want to share with you a bit the how and the why, right? So what we try to achieve with BPI are actually two major North Stars, so to say. The first one is time to insight. So along your transformation journey, we want to help you that you gain insights in a much easier and better way, in a data-driven way, out of all of your systems so that you understand how is my business doing, but also including the customer experience, because oftentimes you learn a lot about your business problems, your business process problems from the customer experience. If customers tell you that your invoices, the invoice process is not good, that they complain about it and they are unhappy about it, well, then you know that you have an operational problem in your invoicing process, right? So customer experience is extremely important to understand the starting point. So time to insight is the starting point for your analysis. And then the second North Star metric that we look at is time to adapt, because we don't want to leave you alone with the knowledge about the problems that you have in your process. We want to help you then fix it, right? And time to adapt, the ease of making the changes really happen in your system landscape, in your business processes. That's the second important metric that we focus on with BPI. Now, if we talk BPI, what is that about, right? What is the scope of that? So I want to spend a few minutes on that. So when we talk BPI, business process intelligence, it's important to me that you understand that we really talk about end-to-end process transformation. This is not only about process mining, which is a bit of a hype topic at the moment, right? It's really about fully kind of accompanying our customers throughout the entire change process of what is needed for really transforming your business processes. And for us, this starts with what we call the home base. You see this at the bottom in the middle. So manage, model, and govern your business processes. The home base is the place where everything around process happens, right? Where people go to understand process, where people can go to manage and change process, but also where the entire community collaborates on business processes. So very, very important component, because without the home base, you oftentimes end up in one-off projects, but they never make it kind of into a continuous discipline. And that's what we want to achieve with BPI, making process transformation, process excellence, a continuous discipline for you, and making it as easy as possible for you with the right tool set that we offer for you to manage that kind of end-to-end story. So once you have the home base, you obviously need to start to get the transformation going. And that starts with an analysis part, which is obviously a data-driven way of understanding the current situation you're in with regards to your business process. Where do I have weaknesses? Where do I have strength that I can multiply? What do I need to change, right? How do I perform against peers and all that? So this is the analysis part. The second step is then to really think about the future, right? So how should the process that I've analyzed, where I found some issues, how should that look like? But I not only want to design the future, I also want to simulate it. So what would that do to my process and my process KPIs, cycle times, output, and so on out of the process if I now change something? If I automate step 3, 5, and 7, what does it do to my KPIs? So out of that, you create the basis for really deciding in an economical way about process changes, and not just about gut feeling where people say, oh, process XYZ is not really working, we should do this and that, right? So no, you put it on a fact base, on facts of the analysis and facts of the simulation. Then obviously you want to take the next step. You want to do the step. You want to improve the process. And that can be manifold, right? It could be, for example, that you decide to go on S4, where, you know, on S4, you have capabilities which help you to make your processes that you've analyzed more automated, more efficient, more agile. It could also be that it's not an application that fixes the problem, but rather something like a workflow or a bot that you kind of put on top of an application so that manual tasks get automated in a certain sense, right? Or it could also mean to completely redesign the process as such, to really go into a new process kind of flow. The next step would then be, which is a very important one, to roll it out, right? To make sure the changes hit the ground. And there it's all about the people, right? You saw the picture before. We talked about the process, we talked about the system, we talked about analyzing the data, and now it's about touching the people, making sure that the people who run the process at the end of the day understand what has changed and can live the process in the best possible way to really produce the output that you have designed. And at the end of the day, next step is then to monitor and see whether the process you have modeled is really being lived by the employees and really executed upon that. And how do now the output variables, the KPIs change? Do I get what I had anticipated out of that? As SAP, of course, you know, we have, Kathy mentioned it, 100,000 of customers, 40,000 running ERP, and obviously we have a large database of benchmarking, right? So we know how best practices look like. We know how best KPIs look like, and we can provide you with the perspective on how you perform with the different processes compared to your industry peers and other competitors. So I think also an important aspect in the overall situation. Now, no worries, I won't go into detail here. So we acquired Signavio earlier this year. You may have read those news, right? So we just wanted to illustrate you how the portfolio of Signavio now nicely complements the components that SAP had along that process end-to-end transformation lifecycle, right? So we can offer you the best out of both worlds, if you will, right? So for the analysis phase, we can provide you out of the box KPIs and PPIs, so process performance indicators, and recommendations about what you can do to fix processes without having to really mine the data, just because we have the application, the ERP application, for example, in S4, we can sit right on top and provide you out of the box information about how your business is doing on the process side. If you then need to go broader, if you need to go beyond the SAP landscape, Signavio offers state-of-the-art process mining capabilities to then add all the other components, and also if you need to drill much deeper. And with Qualtrics, we can then also add the experience data into the Signavio suite, and by that also have the experience kind of information in your analysis part. On the design and simulate, obviously the Signavio suite is very strong with process modeling. Signavio is the world market leader in business process management software, where process modeling and process simulation are key components, but also the capability to map a customer journey. So, how is your customer receiving his goods, right? So for example, as a customer journey, how does this map into your business processes? Which business processes do I need to touch if I want to change a customer experience, right? Oftentimes, our customers don't really know that, right? Which systems are behind it, which processes. We can map that and bring that nicely together with Signavio. On the improvement side, we have all the components on our business technology platform. I already mentioned that. And then for the rollout, it's the collaboration hub of Signavio, which is the central component of bringing the entire process community together, and by that being able to teach the end users on what has changed. And on the monitoring side, and both components are nicely coming together. So the overall portfolio of business process intelligence is made up out of today 3 components. It's the Signavio world, as you just saw it, right, with the 4 components: process manager, process intelligence, process governance, and the hub kind of as the combining entity in the middle. As SAP, we have announced a product which is to be launched in August, which is called SAP Process Insights. Kind of a pre-version of that is already existing today. It's already out and being used for the RISE transformations, which is called Process Discovery. So Process Insights is, if you will, the next evolution of that, a full SaaS-based product with out-of-the-box KPIs and recommendations for your ECC and S4HANA system. And then last but not least, it's about our process automation suite, which is sitting on our business technology platform. And all of those components together, we call business process intelligence. What we are going to do now next is, of course, we bring these components together. As I said, we acquired Signavio. It was early March when we acquired them. So we are now working through the integration, bringing components together and obviously technologies together. And by mid of next year, you will see the business transformation suite then in the market, where the Signavio, the SAP Organic Process Insights, and the SAP Process Automation components are then finally coming together. Now, with a bit of a double click into the RISE transformation, S4 transformations, we support these transformations end to end. So you see from the very first step of defining your goals and the scope, you need data about your processes. You need to understand, what do I need to change on my S4 transformation going forward? We help you with SAP Process Insights. In analyzing the current state and really, getting a better understanding about the process flows and so on, we help you with Signavio. In defining the target state, well, how should the best practice look like? What do I want to adjust on the best practice side? How should the new process be modeled? Again, Signavio. In realizing it, in bringing things together, so we're working very closely with our friends from the support organization within SAP, so Solution Manager and Cloud Application Lifecycle Management, because we want to make it as easy to you, back to the point of time to adapt, right? So that if you have modeled your business process from a business side on how it should run like in the future, we want to make it as easy as possible for you to then implement it easily then in the IT configuration in Solution Manager, right? To make sure that you get it easily handed over. So there you will see a lot of benefits coming together. We know this is painful today, but as we now have Signavio, the business modeling component, and Solution Manager and Calm, the IT modeling component, if you will, very closely together, we're going to tie things nicely into each other. And then it's about deploying and running the system, which is the very people-centric approach that Signavio is driving via the collaboration hub. And then the monitoring, you see it very small here, where you then have your process models, and you then see how the real data is flowing through those model processes. And you see deviations, right? If the model process is like the red that you see here, but you continue to see the data flowing only at the top, something has gone wrong in the rollout or in the implementation, right? So the conformance of how you really run the business compared to as how it was planned, you see that because you combine modeling and system and real data kind of in one perspective. That's actually it. So obviously, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. And for that, I would give it back to Innocente.
Hi, Rouven. Thank you so much. That was absolutely fabulous. What I really took away from that what I really appreciated was when you said, so I've got to write it down because I wrote the note, where you said we work not on gut feeling, but on facts analysis of this analysis of the situation. And how often do you think is it that clients want to work more on gut feel really than just on on the facts or the detail of what there is?
Yeah, we see this actually way too often, right? Sometimes what customers do to avoid gut feeling is they hire a bunch of consultants that then stand behind people, watch how processes are being executed. And out of that, they try to derive the fact basis. But this is obviously cumbersome, costly. So oftentimes what you then hear from the experts in the business, the process managers and so on, we know exactly how processes run. We can tell you how they run, and then they base it on that. Actually, an interesting kind of anecdote. Internally at SAP, I was the Chief Data Analytics Officer, right? And during that transformation, we also used Signavio to look into our processes. And we talked to our shared service center process managers. And they said, we don't need that because we know the processes are standardized 100% and are executed there. And we said, let's try it out. And it came out that 25% of all processes were not following the standard. And the people internally, they were like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. I'm completely struck by the fact that it's not like I was thinking, right? So even the experts, they are obviously far away from the execution on the ground. And you need to bridge the gap between the operational execution on the ground and the management decision, right? And that is what we can help with in a data-driven way. So that's, I think, very, very important to know.
Incredibly. And I suppose the other point is when looking at all of your slides was how fundamental it was that we get the base goal correct, that we really understand where we want to go. Otherwise, we can't build the rest of the plan. Am I right?
Absolutely. I mean, if you don't know where you are today, how do you want to define where you need to go? I mean, you can go, it's no problem. But the question is, how big is the value that I get out of such a transformation if I don't know my starting point? Because I define a future state without knowing where I am, right? So, and that's obviously, it's risky, right? Because it could end up in just putting the same that you had into different kind of wrappers, right? But having still more or less the same issues, the same problems, and not creating value by that. And actually, that's what we see in Innocente as well with some customers. They approach transformation very much out of a system kind of upgrade perspective, right? They treat transformation as a system upgrade, which then leads to, and forgive me the wording, but if you have a shitty process and you digitize it, you have a shitty digitized process, right? So, and that's exactly what we see oftentimes, that customers just then have the newest technology, but still run the process in exactly the same way. And obviously the technology then doesn't really help. And that's why we strongly believe in that holistic kind of approach of really transforming throughout system, data, process, and the people, and defining the starting point based on the data that you have to then envision the future and have a plan on how to reach it.
Wonderful. So it's so interesting because when you were describing that to me, it came to life so often. How the system takes the brunt of the blame. So when I asked you that question, it was quite interesting. We didn't quite have a question yet, but Sean van der Merwe, I think, in essence, asked exactly what I asked you. He said, "My experience tells me bad business ownership equals bad business process, and the scapegoat is then the system." So I think he's talking to exactly what you said there. We've got another question here from Steve Jacobs. Sorry, if I'm looking this way, the questions are on this side of my screen. It says, "Is the transition from MS Visio BPMN 2.0 to Signavio already there so that flows do not have to be redone?"
There are integration points. We need to look into the versioning and so on, but yes, there are integration points actually not only from Visio, but also from other BPMN models. Once you have a BPMN annotation already, there are then ways to easily bring things into the Signavio world.
Okay, wonderful. Let's see if there are more questions for you. There aren't. So I have an interesting question for you. What do you think is the most frequent question that you get from mature business owners when they're wanting to deal with these kinds of problems?
Yeah, the question oftentimes is how to start, right? So where to start? What we see is that many customers, I wouldn't say have lost control, but at least have, business has grown, system landscapes have grown, data complexity has grown, process complexity has grown. So oftentimes it's a bit of, it's such a big amount of complexity that customers struggle to where to start. And what we normally then do is we slice the elephant into pieces, right? We say, let's try it out with one specific process where you feel you have a good kind of sense of the system it's running in, the data which is flowing through, the people who are touching it, and really try it out to make it transparent and also show the value of that. Because oftentimes the people within organizations, they also need to market the work to the executive level to then say, look, this is what we got out of this. If we now do this for the entire company, imagine the value that we can create. So slicing the elephant into pieces and getting going on something like that, that's something that on one side we hear a lot, the problem of the complexity that they face. And then our answer normally is to really try it out and really play around with a certain dedicated process to show the value so that they then get kind of the mandate to drive things further and then with a more complex task then.
Wonderful. So what I hear you saying, so I come from the HR background, so my world is all about people. What I hear you saying is tomorrow we're going to be talking a bit about customer experience. And so by breaking it down into those bite-sized chunks for the client, not only are you improving your solution, but you're also increasing the experience, the positive of the experience with that. I have another question for you here from Marnie Stein. And Marnie says, does Signavio replace the process modeling in Solman? Do we need to migrate to Signavio if we have a lot of processes modeled in Solman? No. And I hope I said Solman correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. Solution Manager is the long version, but everybody says Solman who's in that space. So absolutely a clear answer, no. So Signavio, if you want to differentiate Signavio and the Solman, Signavio is used as the business side of the modeling, right? It has a great user experience, and I think if you do the modeling in Solman, you have experience with not such a great user experience, right? So business people tend to like and love Signavio, so that's where normally the business conversation happens. The Solman part is then the IT implementation, which is then more on the how do I then bring it into the system. So what we will do though, so we won't replace Solman, but what we will do is we make the kind of connection much tighter and much more simpler for you. So in a more simplified way and in a visionary way, it's you model in Signavio, then you click on the right mouse button and there is a menu saying you want to transfer into Solution Manager. Yes. And then the Solution Manager configuration gets populated accordingly, right? That's a bit very simplistic. I know it will be more clicks than that, but I mean, from the vision perspective, so that you get the point, we're going to bring things very tightly and closely together to make it easy for you, for your transformation, because our experience is that if you run this transformation, the modeling discussion normally is in the business. and they don't like the solution manager world at all, right? So that's why we strongly believe in that combination, but we will not replace solution manager, but we will tightly integrate and make it as easy as possible for you to go from one world into the other.
Amazing. Okay, so I hear what you say with it'll be a bit more complicated, but the answer is therefore yes. Watch this space, I assume.
Absolutely. You can look forward to that, because I know in many of the transformational projects, this is exactly the pain point where also a lot of money is spent on bringing things from left to right.
Wonderful. So I was wanting to ask you, is there a particular area where these solutions don't work, or do they just work for any business?
Actually, they work obviously for system-based businesses, right? If you don't have data, if it's not running through a system, it's tough for BPI to build a data-driven analysis, right? So once you have a system in the back and you have records, that works, and then it's irrespective of the underlying application, whether it's SAP or non-SAP. That doesn't really matter. So we can mine any system, we can get the data from any system and bring it into the business process context. Even though, admittedly, the effort that is spent on non-SAP systems is obviously higher. Like any mining vendor out there, you need to build the logical understanding of what data means in the process context, and that needs to happen. For the SAP landscape, we are of course much better position, and we can do this much more easily for you, which is then much quicker than any mining vendor could ever do, right? So we can provide this out of the box kind of process flow perspective, for example, on ERP to help you understand that. So if I would kind of put it in order, so best we are certainly in the SAP landscape. We can do this very natively and directly in the system. For non-SAP landscapes, we can do it like any other mining vendor, but for non-data-driven processes, obviously business process intelligence would not work in the same way. You would then have to bridge the things that are happening outside of a system somehow and bring that kind of manually into BPI.
Perfect. And so are there any particular businesses that you prefer to implement these systems in? Are there sort of like industries where you see that it works better than most?
Actually, not really, in a sense. So it's more or less industry agnostic. There are probably industries who are more, more focused on process excellence than others, right? Because their business model relies heavily on efficiency of business processes. If you take, for example, the retail industry, which has very, very low margins, right? If they are not good in managing their stock and managing the supply chain and all that, and be very efficient in running these processes, they immediately are in trouble. Whereas maybe other industries who have larger scale business, not such quickly things running through the systems, you might not have that dependency on the efficiency side. Nevertheless, the point that is common in all of those is the agility aspect, right? Every business that we see out there is on their heels to really become digital, to become agile, because they understand, specifically out of the pandemic, that agility of their business is absolutely important. And getting agility into your business is what BPI at the end of the day is all about. And that to me is actually kind of across all industries. There is no difference. Every industry is affected by that and drives towards that kind of thinking of agility, resilience, and efficiency.
Definitely, especially nowadays. I see we've got another question from Will. And Will says, assuming that a business may need to reorganize roles and responsibilities to ensure sustainable business process focus, do you have any recommendations around this topic?
Around the roles assignment then, so first of all, I think it's important to have a process-centric perspective on that, because people and roles always are tied to the business process, right? So from my angle, that's why I shared that slide with the 4 components, right? Where people is in the middle, right? And roles and responsibilities are normally a long business process. So if you are a person producing invoices in a shared service center, your role is that, and you then are in the order to cash process, right? So you should think in a process-centric way, and then kind of let the process define then the roles and responsibilities and cut it along that. Because to me, in general, what we see, companies are organized functionally, but not process-wise, right? They have finance, accounting, controlling, but they don't have order to cash as an organization, right? And then what you can do within finance, accounting, and contracting, you then define roles that drive the process. But that always then is difficult because you have that cut line between the process and the functional organizational setup. So in my angle, if you're anyway reorganizing, try to align the roles and responsibilities with the process flows, because then it gets much easier for the people to do their work, because then they are aligned kind of in the way they execute their work and not in the way they have their functions. I'm not 100% sure if I understood the question correctly, but I hope that at least there are some parts of it answering it somehow.
Perfect. It sounds good from what I can read here. Okay. So, Rouven, interesting thing, because I think we often with business owners, and I don't know if you found this, do you think that they often think of a role as a person and not as a function? And they try and create these roles around people and what they can do and how they want to do it versus what, as you said, what that function is or what that role actually is supposed to be contributing.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, that's what I just meant, right? So you see that a lot, that you have a functional kind of setup where it's about, people have certain functions in that setup, right? And it's not tied into the flow of processes where ideally you match the profile and kind of the roles that are in there with the flow of the business. And we see organizations going there slowly, but surely, right? There are organizations who have changed that from a functional setup to a more process-oriented setup. But I think it's still the outlier, not the rule, right? And that's where you need to then figure out on how you manage the data, the system access, the roles, and along the process. That's where all the complexity comes in. Obviously, there are good reasons for functional setups as well, right? That's why we all live in such a world. But you need to somehow manage then the process flows which goes across the different functions. That's still a struggle for many customers.
Wonderful. Then just one last question from Amanda. She asks, is there any area in which a start with Signavio is recommended?
Well, I would say if you are in the context of a transformation, Signavio should be a no-brainer for you with regards to the modeling and the collaboration. So business process management, which is around process modeling, process design, process simulation, all of that aspects. To me, every transformation, actually every company should have a practice and a discipline around that, because to me, as I said, this is the home base. This is the heart of the transformation, right? And we had one customer who was also references, who said it was the lifesaver for our transformation that they had Signavio there, because that's where everything comes together at the end of the day, right? So that should be the starting point, and then the collaboration hub for building kind of the community around it. But obviously, it also won't work without the data and the data-driven approach. So process mining with process intelligence from Signavio, or SAP Process Insights if it's more on the ERP SAP landscape, should also be in the mix there. But if you want to get started, probably the process modeling and the collaboration hub is there. Maybe one comment, Innocent, just because we are nearing the end, right? So actually currently it's BPI tour time, which is our regional events where we talk about these concepts, where we talk a lot about, we have customers, we have partners, we have SAP internally stories to share with our customers around how to get started with BPI, what's BPI about, where are we heading. So if you want, feel free to chime in. It's actually today and throughout the next, I think 10 days, we have 4 regional events You can join any of them by just registering. So just type in BPI Tour. You will find it on Google, and then you can chime in to learn more about BPI if you're interested.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Rouven, I've got one last quick question here, and this is from Calvin van der Walt. He says, when is the integration between Signavio and the Solution Manager / Cloud ALM planned on the roadmap?
Well, I mean, there is integration existing today already, right? It's there. It has been around for months, right? So it's already there. What I was trying to explain before is that we have kind of roadmap items now, which will make it gradually better and better and better and better, right? To a point where it should become the one-click, exaggerated a bit, but the one-click vision that I just shared. But obviously that's kind of a journey now, right? So there are intermediate steps. You will see the first kind of improvements earlier next year, and then throughout the months to come, you will always see gradually improvements, and by that things will become easier. But as I said, in general, the integration is there already today, but it can become better because so far the integration is based on Signavio being a standalone company, SAP being a standalone company. Now we are one company, and with that we can obviously bring things nicely together.
Wonderful. Rouven, thanks for your time. Now I really have one last question, and this one's from Amanda Gibbs, and she says, this is the most important question. Will you join us for the next Safila in South Africa if travel is permitted again?
Oh, I'd love to. I've never been to South Africa, I must admit, and I'd love to. So count me in whenever this is possible again from a travel perspective. I'm more than happy to join on site and then talk to you in person for sure.